All right. Well, this is the Jordan Garber Now podcast. And I have to admit, it doesn't really get much better than this because we are joined by none other than UFC and WWF legend, Dan the Beast Severn. Dan, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you on.
Well, Jordan, thank you for having me on.
Well, it is
You, you
great to
said you said WWF, so you should have almost said WWE because WWF would be go to an older audience. WWE is for the more current.
Absolutely. And with our audience, we have a lot of current listeners and a lot of listeners that really enjoyed the old school days. But before we get into all of that and how we highlighted your journey here, how did it all begin for yourself? You know, you were born in Michigan and you were a two-time All-American at Arizona State University. So from that one time you became an All-American, like, did you know what you wanted to do with your path in MMA and wrestling, or did it kind of just all fall in day after day?
I'll just simply say it kind of fell into place, but then also, how does the cliche go? Necessity is the way it truly goes. It says necessity is the mother of invention. Well, necessity was the father of invention. So I'll just say that in everybody's life, there will be a few dead ends, a few U-turns, a couple yields, a do-over here or there, and it's all depends on that type of adversity as to how do you deal with it. And I had to simply I had to keep a roof over a family's head. I had to keep food on the table, and I did it with opportunities. I mean, I took a sport, as you said, like I took a sport like amateur wrestling, and I was able to utilize that to pay for my education. I have seven other brothers and sisters. I'm second on the totem pole. Asking asking mom or dad for money to go to college never even entered my mind. Because there was no money to be asked for. We lived on a farm, and there was just enough to take care of clothing and feeding a family of basically of 10 when you add mom and dad into there. So I used the sport of wrestling. I paid for my education, and then it provided me with the opportunity for employment. I went right into coaching at Arizona State, Michigan State. Um, I was approached by some professional wrestling promotions through the mid '80s. I did not turn pro then because had I turned pro, I would have lost my amateur wrestling status, and it meant too much to me. As of the 1992 Olympics, a new rule came down that allowed athletes to be both amateur and professional simultaneously, as long as you weren't involved in a university program or a high school program, because you would still be governed by the High School Athletic Association rules or the NCAA rules. Well, I was well past my collegiate eligibility, so now I can have my cake and eat it too. I can be a professional wrestler, and I can still represent the United States on world teams, Olympic teams, things of that nature. So, like I said, 1992 is when I turned pro, and by 1994, I jumped into a cage, and that's the only reason anyone knows about me is I climbed into a cage first, and then later for the WWF at the time, now known as WWE, and a lot of followers thought that it was the other way around. They thought I was a cage fighter first, and then I went to the WWE. Which, yeah, I did go from the UFC to the WWE, but I was a professional wrestler first. And they used to say, Dan, you're a sellout. You left the real fighting stuff to do this cheesy professional wrestling. I'm thinking, really? I said, it's you don't know your history then, because I went from being a professional wrestler to jumping into a cage. So, and they seem to think that that was okay, but the other way wasn't okay. So, a bit of a hypocrite, I would say.
Well, in a way, like, it's really interesting because MMA and professional wrestling, they cover very similar things, but two different sides of it. So, you know, when you're working in front of two different crowds and one of them involves acting and reacting, well, whether that's shooting or working at the same time, your preference, and then you're fighting at UFC 4 against Royce Gracie, then, like, how do you compare those two? Like, how do you prepare yourself for both of those at the same time? You're talking about being in like the MLB and the NFL, being in two major companies at the same time or around the same time. So was that a really big adjustment for you, or is it just like you just found a way to get used to it and you just kept going?
Well, I mean, it was I had a very unique contract on both sides. I was non-exclusive to Vince, meaning that I could work for anybody, including, I mean, I was at the time working for the NWA, and I was the NWA champion. And NWA wanted me to be exclusive to them, and I said no. I said, unless you guys are going to pay me to sit home, if I've got opportunities, I'm gonna go explore those opportunities. And then WWD, I was working for the WWE at the same time, NWA, and then and almost any other promotion that would hire me if I had a free weekend at the time. But then I was also doing cage fighting matches. So when I tell people that, I literally, and it's sitting right next to me here, my planner. I've been working out of a planner since my junior year in high school.
Oh wow.
Now you think about that, because my
I should
my
start
wrestling,
doing
my
that.
amateur wrestling schedule was so intense through my spring and summer months that I even had to graduate early and stuff like that. So I didn't graduate my class because I was off in some country doing competition, freestyle wrestling here, Greco-Roman there. I was a mixed martial artist before the term mixed martial artist ever came about. I wanted to be a very successful amateur wrestler, so by my freshman year in high school, I jumped into from being folk style. Folk style is a style that is done predominantly inside the United States. By my freshman year in high school, I jumped into freestyle wrestling. By my sophomore year, I jumped into Greco-Roman. Those are your two Olympic styles: World Championships, Olympic and Olympic Games every 4 years. Then by my freshman year in college, I jumped into judo. I jumped into sambo. Again, these are the grappling arts. So, and then, like I said, just more things came about. And through my career, I jumped into a couple of these tough man contests, some submission grappling matches. And but when you look at what is some of the best skill sets to have, when you look at the Ultimate Fighting Championships today,
Yeah.
I tell people that probably 90 plus, no, 90, higher than that, probably 98, 99% of the time, these matches are going to be ended on the ground. A takedown is going to take place. They're going to end up down on the ground, and it's going to be ended one of three ways. Ground and pound is still the number one way. Ball up your fist much like a club and bludgeon your opponent somewhere on the head, neck, and face area. Number two, a chokehold. Number three, an armbar. I always tell people, don't believe me, look at the stats. I'm a guy that looks at stats to see repeatability on factors. And I always say that if those are your top three offensive moves, then you better learn to defend those three top moves for your defense.
Now let's talk about UFC 4 to something like UFC 200 and up. What is the difference in MMA back then and now? And is it more of a positive change or a negative change, or is it just the same as it was?
Big change. I'd say the biggest change is in the overall quality of the athletes. The athletes have evolved a great deal, whereas in the beginning, the athletes were one-dimensional. I say one-dimensional. I throw myself in the same category. You could have been a boxer versus a Kempo karate guy versus a judo practitioner versus a sambo practitioner versus a sumo. It was more of a freak show. And if you saw both products side by side, you would rather actually watch the product from the past, because it was more entertaining in a sense that there were no rounds. There were very, very few rules. As a matter of fact, there were only two rules, those being do not bite your opponent. Rule number two, do not stick any fingers in their eye sockets, meaning no eye gouging. So you only two rules, no weight classes, no time periods. So it was definitely a lot more entertaining to watch David versus Goliath type matches there as well. You could have easily a couple 100-pound weight differences. Now you got people that they're they're half a pound over, and they're being docked. I just kind of smile, because a lot of the younger competitors as I said, the sport has evolved a great deal, but a lot of them don't understand that, fighting 3 fights in a night,
Oh my.
you have to be very strategic as to how you go through 3 men in an evening. I only say
That's
men
tough.
because women competitors did not exist at this time period. And, so I don't know. I think that really is about it. There's a major difference between the two. Will there ever be a tournament format? Yeah, there are some companies that do run a tournament format, but they're not all done in one night. They might run one show this month. They might wait 1 month and they'll do leg number 2, and then another month later they'll do leg number 3. That's how they're doing the tournament format, because your athletic commissioners have stepped in to come up with all these rules and regulations now for the sport of mixed martial arts.
Well, let's talk about some news-making questions here that would pretty much lighten up the wrestling world. Raw has the Raw Underground going on right now, where they did something very similar to what they did in the 90s with the MMA being involved in the WWF, and we'll go into that with the NWA Invasion angle. But when it comes to Raw Underground, do you like what they're doing, or do you not like what they're doing right now with it?
Well, honestly, I am aware of it, but I have not. I have not actually seen what it looks like there, Jordan. So I really cannot. I can't really answer that
Hey, no
question because
worries. It's
But
kind of just like a
but again,
dumbed down. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. I would just gonna say you're talking to a person that I watch very little television at all. Haven't, and for most of my life. With the internet, for example, I can watch a specific match, and I will do something like that. If I do a lot of appearances at MMA events, I do a lot of appearances at professional wrestling events. I still do professional wrestling matches, um, and even when I'm at these shows, because I'm talking with other people, I don't get a chance to really watch too much of the actual action that's taking place. But I do watch very specific matches here or there, and that's what I do. I do a lot of match breakdowns for amateur wrestling, but then also for guys who are wanting to get better mixed martial arts. They'll send me some matches, and then I break it all down as to what I look at is what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and how they should be doing some training. So, getting back to your original question, I'm not the person to ask about that.
Hey, no
The
worries.
underground series.
If we don't ask, we don't know there, Dan. But there is one thing you were involved in. That was the NWA Invasion angle there in 1998, working with some of the top names in the company. Did you think that was hot or not back in the time? Did you enjoy that debut, or do you think it could have been planned out a little better?
I mean, professional wrestling is very unique in a lot of different ways. I always say that if you could take an MMA fighter and educate them a little bit more in some of the psychological and emotional aspects of how to lead that audience, how to lead that crowd, how to get yourself over, or how to get certain reactions. Because let's face it, a heel is always looking for negative reactions, and the baby face is looking for positive type reactions. How do you do that? Well, you only have basically 3 tools. You have your facial expressions, you have your audio, and most people are never going to hear you unless they give you a microphone, and you got your body language. So you really only have 2 ingredients, and that's basically facial expressions and what you actually are doing out there. So I I actually felt like I had an advantage being a professional wrestler first, and then taking the knowledge that I learned from professional wrestling and was able to apply it in the mixed martial arts world. So, I mean, it might be hard to fathom that, but there's a lot of things. There's a lot of psychological aspects that are the same. Vastly two different products, and you've had a lot of professional wrestlers that have proclaimed that they're going to jump into the cage only to have their matches or have their minds change within the next 30 seconds of that their short-lived MMA careers. But you know, I'll leave it at
Well, I
that.
feel like, and it's true, is like people like to act tough and they think they're ready until you actually go in there and you go face to face with an opponent. And I remember I was talking about this with Mitch Clark, who is in the UFC, who wrestles on the Canadian indie scene now. And he was saying, like, it's all different when you're standing across from an opponent who wants to rip your head off. Like, it's hard because when you're in that cage, like, there's no remorse, right? I'm sure you agree with that.
Well, no, there's a huge psychological aspect of it, and that's I think the thing that I have over most people, or I should say that has been one of my strongest suits in my entire career, is having that positive mental strength. You know, because like I said early on in this interview, I've only did two training camps in a 20-year career.
Holy crap.
How is that? Okay, how is that possible? And not once, not one single time have I ever sat down in between rounds when rounds started up. Now, again, through the no holds barred era, there were no rounds. There was just only one round. And basically, that match will end when either one of us are either unconscious or the referee is pulling one of us off of each other or the doctor intervenes. Again, a lot of your viewers and listeners, they're not going to understand it because they're only used to today's product of mixed martial arts that has rounds and it has 47 or 49 rules. But if they go back and look at some of these NHB, which stands for no holds barred, having just the two rules, no biting, no eye gouging, no weight classes, no rounds, bare knuckled action, 8-man tournament. You don't get much rawer format than that. And to know that I did 2 training camps, but the psychological aspects, sitting down, who can breathe better? If you're sitting down in a chair and you're kind of hunched over and you got someone in your face, I don't care if they're flapping a towel in your face, something like this, or if I'm standing up, I've got my hands on my head and I'm walking around that cage, who is breathing better? I am, because I'm standing up. I've got my chest expanded. I'm taking in a lot of good air. That's one aspect. But then the other aspect is psychologically, you're in your chair, you're on your stool on the other side of the cage, and you're looking at over across the cage in between this 1 minute round that we have, this 1 minute rest, and you're seeing this guy's not sitting down. And in your mind, you're thinking, he's not tired. How is this possible? So psychologically, I've already created an advantage over you. Even though I'm sucking air from every orifice of my body, there's things that you do that I learned in my amateur wrestling career. You have to learn to impose your will upon another individual, both physically and mentally.
Very interesting stuff, man. We're going to thank you again. We're obviously still have a few questions left, but lessons for this. We have a lot of aspiring people that want to join mixed martial arts, and they can learn from the best now. And
well, they can, but there's a lot of things that you cannot teach an individual. It's like I have a 10,000 square foot training facility in Coldwater, Michigan. I purchased it because of my love for amateur wrestling. So I was doing it for all amateur wrestling, but then as new things came into my life, when I jumped into professional wrestling, I realized who is teaching these professional wrestlers, because there are just so many things that are wrong with it. A lot of your viewers would not know this, but I actually have a teaching degree.
Oh wow!
I know
nice.
I know how to put lesson plans together. Now, Jordan. I'll back up for a second here. I have 4 other brothers. There's 5 males, 5 Severn males, that all 5 of us went to college on full athletic scholarships, all for the sport of wrestling. I had 3 sisters. They went to college on just about full academic scholarships. So out of 8 kids, my parents were very fortunate because they didn't have to cough up hardly anything for having 8 children that went to school. So I always tell people I'm a jock with a brain, and that's a scary cat. There's a lot of dumb jocks, and you read about them all the time because they're doing dumb stuff all the time. Well,
Me. You guys gotta search the name Jordan Garber. But no, you know what? I think it's about living and learning. And when you learn that hard lesson, you don't do it again. And it's an absolutely amazing thing. And another amazing thing for yourself is you're involved in the hottest era of pro wrestling in 1998. I want to just quickly talk about the 1998 King of the Ring pay-per-view. Why is because you worked three amazing talents. You worked D'Lo Brown, actually, which I have a question about later. And then you worked Owen Hart, God rest his soul, and then you worked The Rock. So you're working legends, old greats, and you're working the best of the best. So what are some memories you have with Owen? And not just that, what was some of the chemistry like with not just The Rock, but D'Lo Brown during that incident as well for the European title?
well, I mean, I'll jump right on D'Lo Brown. I mean, I end up knowing D'Lo Brown on the independent scene before ever being involved with WWE. So that was knowing him beforehand. The beauty of professional wrestling is the first time. If you and I were to go to the ring, the very first time will be probably the toughest time that we will have a match together because it's the first time, and I'm not certain exactly what all you do, and you're not exactly what all I do, and it's how light am I, how stiff am I? I mean, there's a lot of things that come into the equation there. I really wish I would have been born into the era of the territories where you could have worked in the northern part of the United States. You could have been in the southern portion, East Coast, West Coast, and then go over to Japan for a while, go over to a European tour. And then, every time they have this loser leaves town, boom, you're gone. But this internet era has destroyed all of that. So it's, the more times that you work with an individual, the easier it is. All you simply know is how does the match end? What kind of time slot are you looking to fill? And you go, because after you've worked with the same guy 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times or more, because back in that era, you could get away with that. But now, because we have cell phones, we have all this instant gratification. Whatever match you had last night, you can't be doing that same match again tonight.
Everything's different. And I think back then at the house shows, am I correct? Like they used to be the same finish for most of those matches, like in the 80s. So let's say you have 20 events in a row, 15 out of those outcomes would be the same finish. And
exactly. Again, that's what I said. Now with this internet era and everyone, I mean, you got people that are sitting there in the audience and they've got their cell phone out and they're videotaping it or they're streaming it live. I mean, you hear all these people you've got people at, let's say, the Ultimate Fighting Championships. They might be sitting ringside. They may have had to pay for that seat, but now they're sitting there and they're doing a Facebook Live video right there. They're spanning out
television value.
All of their friends. Exactly. To me, it's like going. So I understand when the people that are putting on these events say that no cell phones are allowed and stuff like that. I can understand where they're coming from. It's almost impossible to enforce because if you got an arena that holds 10,000 people, somebody's going to be out there holding that cell phone up, taking pictures or taking video. They don't know if they're streaming or not.
Excuse me. No, exactly. And the thing is, too, and just how storylines nowadays, I feel like they're ruined because, there's too much buzz on the internet. And then that's how people form opinions. And then those storylines don't really get a chance to kick because there's so much negative. There's always going to be someone to say something negative about the product because it's the internet and there's millions of people. So just those more negative kind of hurts the business a little bit, especially when people try to expose it the way they do in certain ways.
I will agree with you. There's a lot of keyboard champions that there's a couple times I was involved in interviews, and they were, different people would be coming in there they'd just be typing a quick little question, something like this, and every now and then you get this negative one, and I'll simply just say, and as and you're the monitor, and you're saying, well, Dan, we got a question from so and so right there, and they ask you a question like this, I go, now I would say, Jordan, delete, let's just move on, and it's like, oh, well, it's like, wow, Dan, you just kind of squash this person. Well, a lot of people don't. When I was at the I'm about to into a quick little story, sidetrack story here to kind of
No
express my
worries.
point.
Take your time, my man.
This when I was at the peak of my, I'll say my MMA career and professional career combined, I was probably getting, I'd say on average 1 to 2 death threats a night
Oh my.
that were left on my voicemail in my office because I ran a business. So people would actually call my office and they'd be leaving death threats up at this. Well, I always got at the office before. I had a gentleman that ended up working there, just doing a lot of catch up with emails, stuff like that. So I got in there late one morning because I had some appointments prior to it. I get in there and he's white as a ghost. His name was Mark. I go, Mark. I go, what's the problem? He's like, dude, you got a death threat on your voicemail. I go, well, play it. And he plays it. And it, again, same stuff I've heard before. I go, without me even looking, I said, I bet you that voicemail came in somewhere between, I'll say 11 and maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And he looks and goes, well, how'd you know? I go, when do the bars let out? No matter where you're at in the United States, something like this, it could be 2, 3, 4 hours time difference. I go, when do the bars let out? I said, also, I got, the person was a dumbass. They called and left a voicemail. Why don't you call him right back up and just say, sorry, Dan can't fit you in today to kill you, but he can squeeze you in come tomorrow between 2 other people he's got to kill right now in the process. And he goes, I said, I got all the stuff I could do if I want to give this to the cops, something like this. Because otherwise, I go, don't waste my time with it. This little button that calls right here, go delete, and he's gone. That's how I handle that. Gone, I move on. Whereas some people, they lose their mind about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. You know, one opinion can affect many others. And speaking of opinions here, this actually led to your departure from the WWF. If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But you're supposed to actually join the Ministry of Darkness. That's all I'll say. You were not happy, and you actually wanted to leave the company because they wanted to do something with you and the character. Can you kind of elaborate on that, if you wish to?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, you have WWF has a creative team, same way that WWE still has that same creative team. That they're looking for different ideas as to how to get your career going either better or how to sustain it longer. And the cycle of a lot of professional wrestlers is going from the baby face to a heel, back to the baby face. It just all depends on where you started from in the first place. Well, I mean, I was simply just known as Danny B. Severn. I had Jim Cornette. I really enjoyed having Jim Cornette as my mouthpiece because, Jim's very, Jim isn't very, he gets very emotional as he's talking about this kind of stuff. But I mean, the thing you got to love about Jim Cornette is he talks, you can actually see the child in him come out. The person who fell in love with professional wrestling all those decades ago, you can almost see that enthusiasm that comes out of him, how passionate he is about professional wrestling. And, so he basically was, my handler. He would walk out to the ring carrying a couple belts. I would have always one around my waist, one on my shoulder. And he was great to have to tell who I am and what I'm about to do to individuals. And so, again, talking about that King of the Ring, now a change of directions. Now they want me to have 666 across my forehead, mark of the beast. And just like you said, they wanted me to become an Undertaker disciple and Ministry of Darkness. And I'm like going, time out, guys, not going to happen. I live in small town USA. I'm not going to have repercussions to my family, nor to my businesses, nor to myself. And I go, you don't realize how many people buy into this.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't need that. I said, besides, if I do this, and in the middle of all this, you guys decide to let me go, That'll be the last thing people remember of Dan Severn. And they'll be like, Dan Severn lost his mind. Some of that ink of 666 has penetrated his brain and he's warped his brain cells. I go, no, 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 I'm not going to have that. And then all of a sudden, one of the road agents says to me, he says, well, Dan, we could use you poorly.
Oh boy. So they try to put you in these shitty situations on purpose, it seems.
Yeah, well, okay, but I go, what do you mean by that? They said, well, Dan, we could have you start losing matches. Oh, I said, oh, you can ask me to lose a match, but where does it state anywhere on my contract I have to lose to anybody? What if I walk into your world of fantasy and I turn fantasy into reality? Which one of your so-called stars is going to hold a candlestick to me?
Oh boy.
But that's when
a little harder now.
Well, again, I mean, I'm a nice guy.
Oh yeah.
You want to start pushing me? Well, sooner or later, I'm going to push back.
So was the locker room scared of you during this time because you were really upset, like near your departure? Were people a little edgy with you?
No, I don't think they really. Most of them probably did not, weren't aware of it. Wasn't part of their business. The thing about professional wrestling, especially for a company like WWE, you got what 7, 8 different storylines that are taking place because we cannot put all of our eggs into one basket. If we have you and we got a great storyline going with you, and all of a sudden you get hurt, I mean you get hurt for real, we're screwed. We have to know that each month there is a monthly pay-per-view that we're preparing for. So you have all these vast different storylines. And that's again, there's a lot of great creativity. The showmanship. I give professional wrestling a lot of kudos for I'll say the awakening of the imagination. There's a lot of good business things I learned from it. There's a lot of creativity I learned from it that I did not think I possessed, and I did apply that creativity and that business savvy to my cage fighting career. Because again, I always tell people I was a professional wrestler first, and then I was a cage fighter.
And that's a hard transition, I feel. Wrestling.
Well, transition. Okay, as you stated earlier, there was no transition. I would be doing a cage fight one night. I'd be doing a professional wrestling match the next night, and there were some days that I would be on the road 20 some odd days out of 30 days a month. I'd be waking up, and I would be, as I'm rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I'm looking around the hotel room. I actually had to pull out my planner to look at it to realize where am I at and what is my function tonight. Am I a professional wrestler tonight? Am I a cage fighter? Am I doing a wrestling clinic with kids? Am I going to be working with adults? Am I doing a women's self-defense seminar? Am I doing a speaking engagement? Am I doing an autograph signing? I mean, it was. I'll say it was crazy, but crazy still exists. I always tell people I have about probably, I'll say, a dozen or more jobs. Even during a pandemic, where most people are losing their mind because they're sitting at home doing nothing, I'm losing my mind because I'm still trying to do 10 or 12 different jobs. But now I'm trying to do it all through the internet, through Zooms, through phone calls, emails, text messages, messenger messages, both filtered and non-filtered. I can't keep up with all the different ways that we're trying to communicate with people.
Overall, before we actually talk about your seminars and what you offer to the world and our audience, what was just your best UFC fight? Whether that was against Shamrock, Gracie, Abbott, anybody? What was your best UFC fight and the best event, from start to finish in your MMA career?
I hold a couple of different records when it comes to mixed martial arts. then if again, there's okay, if you want to look at the top company, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, and for the UFC, I am the only Triple Crown champion in the world. Triple Crown meaning that I won one of their normal 8-man tournament events that they were holding back during that no hold barred era. I ended up winning one of their super bouts. That they started to break away from the tournament format because they were seeing how many times that the tournament format people were getting hurt, so that you might win your first match, but you cannot continue on in the tournament. And then also I ended up winning their ultimate, which at the time they were looking to run this multiple, but it didn't fare that well. The ultimate was when they brought back the best of the best. They threw them all back into this 8-man tournament, and I won that. So out of the distinction of winning 3 different things, being the first and only Triple Crown champion ever, I hold 2 other distinctions of UFC number 5 coming back and destroying a field of 3 men in the shortest amount of time. Then to come back in the ultimate when they brought back the best of the best. And I was inside of that octagon cage just over 1 hour. Now think about being in a cage, and there's only 2 rules: no biting, no eye gouging. And with my 3 opponents, I was inside the octagon cage just over 1 hour between my 3 opponents. And this was in Denver, Colorado, so it's mile-high elevation. And I did say that was one of the 2 things I trained for. I trained for 35 days for that event. But my cardiovascular was off the chain.
All right, let's get this one out of the way here. How I met you is through your appearances with CWE here in Winnipeg, and through Brent Brooks and the training seminars that you've been doing. And you've been doing wrestling seminars, MMA and submission seminars. I obviously it sells itself why people should be going to these seminars. But how much do you enjoy doing it and just teaching the new generation? Like, that must be really, really awesome for you. After everything you've done, now you're passing it along.
No, I've been doing it real long. I mean, I always tell people that I started my amateur wrestling career in 7th grade, 1969. I mean, you start doing math, okay, when you think about 1969, holy moly, that was a long time ago. But I learned it through the school system, physical education program. But now if you go back and look at what is offered in today's schools, physical education, it's a joke. What they pulling off most time. I'll say 20 to 30% of the class does not even dress up now, and we wonder why we live in a world where we have so many obese people, because we're not teaching physical education. We're teaching people to pull out their cell phone and play thumb wars, basically, because they can text with 2 thumbs. They got probably nice and skinny thumbs tied to a big old fat body there, because they can't do nothing else. But it's I don't know. I can't even say anything, I think, positive about what you just asked me right there. It's ask me the question again. I went off on a tangent.
Yeah, no problem at all. What are some of the biggest benefits to yourself as a trainer and a mentor for those MMA seminars? What's the objective?
Well, again, me, I'm trying to inspire, but I hate to say it, because I'm a reality person. There's a lot of guys say, well, do I have what it takes to be a cage fighter? Do I have what it takes to be a professional wrestler? And if I just use just those 2 things, professional wrestling, I've already told you a few things that I like about professional wrestling, the creativity. What I really like about professional wrestling is when something goes wrong. The ring breaks, a rope breaks, something mechanically goes wrong, or there's an injury or something like this. How the talent, whether it be one of them or both of them, how they are able to, on the fly, cover everything up so that the fans are not aware of what took place, or how they can use the rope broke. So now the guy, the heel might grab the rope and they might actually start wrapping around his opponent's neck and start choking with him. I mean, I love it when something goes array, and now they have to fly by the seat of their pants and pull a match out. I love that aspect of professional wrestling. Um, you know, a lot of people they'll learn a lot from me, whether it's in a professional wrestling seminar, a mixed martial arts seminar, submission grappling, because I teach very simple concepts, but these are concepts that when people hear about them, they're like, wow, that made so much sense. But we live in this magical, mystical martial arts world where you got some people that are like, they're actually, they think they can actually throw chi power at you. And I'm like going, you've been drinking your own Kool-Aid for how long here now? And now you're starting to believe your own crap. I mean, it's crap. And then I've actually told individuals it's crap, but not usually around other people, just to them, because I'm thinking, if you're teaching crap and people are paying you to teach you crap, I don't want to poop on you for if that's how the only way you can make your money. But just don't pull me in to validate what you're serving up, because it's still crap. But I don't know what else to tell you right now. It's my
Serving
seminars.
crap on a silver platter.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of bullshit just in this world. You have to really learn how to decipher through a lot of the bullshit. I teach a lot of common sense applications where common sense does not pertain. But again, that's only because I've been a mixed martial artist for so many decades before the term mixed martial artist was ever brought up. And actually, the gentleman that brought up the term mixed martial artist was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Blatnick, who was Jeff Blatnick, who was working for the Ultimate Fighting Championships. But Jeff Blatnick was also a gold. Wait, no, yeah, I think, he was a medalist in the Olympic Games. I think in the 1984 Olympic Games is what he was a medalist. So I've known Jeff for quite a few years.
That's crazy. And anything you could share with Jeff, any crazy stories or anything that you could throw? Because that guy's an innovator, right? Like, if you have any stories with innovation, then that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't say I've been around long enough to hang out there with Thomas Edison or nothing like that, but I like to. Well, I mean, it's kind of like, well, there's a lot of political unrest right now in the world, but then especially inside the United States, you see, and we have an election that's coming up. Our presidential election is coming up, and people are losing their minds.
Oh, it's going crazy.
Whether you're a Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're neither of the above, but you got people that they're voicing their opinion left and right, and to me, there is so much vast stupidity on both sides, into the middle. I have no future for politics. Could I actually have people all the time like, Dan, you need to run for office. I go, no. The world's not ready for someone like me, because can I get stuff done? Oh, yeah, I can get stuff done. You will not like my method of my madness, but I'll get it done. And but what boggles my mind, Jordan, more than anything is when I see literally the millions and millions, and literally it goes into the billions of dollars that are squandered on getting people elected. I mean, the smart thing is you should only be allowed, if you're going to run for an office, you should be allowed only these many times to speak your piece, and you have a budget of only this much money. Inside the United States, we have got billionaires backing different people left and right, and millions and millions of dollars being thrown away on commercials, stupid commercials, endorsing stupidity on both sides, on both sides and in the middle. And the same money could be spent on lowering our deficit. It could be spent on feeding homeless. It could be educating. Well, again, I don't like about all this feeding the homeless stuff like this, because you're homeless for a reason. Because
That's a
I
good
have
point.
people all the time that that hit me up. They're like, Dan, can you spot me this much money, something like that? And I'm like going, don't you have family? And they'll go, yeah. I go, have you asked your family to do this for you? Yeah, but they won't. That speaks volumes to me. And then you expect me, a stranger, simply just to reach in my pocket and give you something? I'm thinking, if your own family won't help you out, something is wrong with you, and you better fix some of your own lawyering. We live in strange times, and stupidity is running rampant.
Understood. Understood. I don't think you could have said it better enough. And like I've been in situations where I've asked my parents for help, and you know what? It at first it's hard, but you got to convince them. You got to give people a reason to help you. And just like yourself, if you help that one person, then there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people crying to you
Yeah,
because you're a figure, and you can't give everyone the same $100. It's impossible. So I think people
exactly.
like need to look at themselves in the mirror before they can judge others. I think that's the way
Well,
I look at it.
again, you know, I always say this. You know when things are going wrong. Don't wait till it's too late to start making some changes. I mean, ultimately, everyone controls their own destiny, whether you like it or not. I mean, it's not like you were driving down the road and someone hit you broadside with another automobile. Those are freakish type of accidents. Usually, most people know if they're starting to have some financial troubles. A lot of people know, well, gee, I just got let go from work. I better not be sitting around drinking up a storm and the whole 9 yards because that's not going to help me out here whatsoever. So there's a lot of things that you could do preventive wise, but then also there's a lot of people in this world that they barely eke by in the first place. So it's yeah, it's kind of like I don't know what else to say. I don't want to come across being so negative. But my aspect is that I'm a realist, and I tend to grab a lot of people by the scruff of the neck, and I will shove their face into the cow pie of reality.
Oh, exactly. And my reality, you can agree with me or disagree with this. It's actually a very brave step up for me to ask for this question. But, performing now, you've wrestled in Japan last year and you've wrestled across the world in the 90s where the era was the hottest. Now, from someone himself, I've said this on Facebook, wrestling is dying right now. You've performed in the Attitude Era. You've performed in the hottest. And now you've performed in an era where it's not so hot. Do you agree with that statement? Is wrestling declining right now, or is it actually slowly advancing? Pro wrestling.
I think there's different aspects of the product are declining. There is a movement right now for a more reality based professional wrestling product. I think like professional wrestling goes through cycles, just like almost anything else does. It's not like when I was growing up, I enjoyed the bigger than life characters. I enjoyed watching Georgie Animal Steel, people like that, Leap and Larry Shane. There's Frenchie, the guy that literally his manager would set a cement block on his head, and the guy would swing what was look like a sledgehammer would smash a cement block on top of the head. The guy would go out to wrestle. I'm thinking, it boggled my mind to watch that kind of stuff. And then there was watching professional wrestling. It made you always wonder. It's like going in professional wrestling, do they always hire some of the dumbest people in the world to be referees? Come on now. The fact that this
Hey,
referee
don't do that to me.
never
Just kidding.
never seen. I'm not trying to push you, boss. I know you got
No,
the
I know,
referee
I
shirt
know, I'm
back.
just bugging you.
But I mean, there's what I love about professional wrestling. It's a 3-ring circus with a side freak show on a professional wrestling card. There might be seven or eight different matches. Whether there's tag team matches, singles matches, ladies matches, midget matches, giants. I mean, there's something there for everyone. Good guys, bad guys. Like I said, there's a little bit of something for everyone. But as I said earlier, I kind of wish I would have been born into that territorial era or back in the era in the true carnival days when professional wrestling was only being done at the
Like George
carnival fairs.
Hankenschmidt, Frank Gotch, those
Yeah,
guys.
so I mean, so now when you got the announcer out there in the ring and the announcer saying, any man, woman, or child that can last 5 minutes in the ring here with the champion will get $10,000. That was a shoot that the announcer was saying, knowing that whatever poor slob was going to climb to that ring, the champ was going to put down hard and fast. So when Billy Bob goes back up in the crowd, bloodied, battered, and bruised, all the locals thought, well, it's got to be real. Look what just happened to one of our own. But you can't do that nowadays because we live in this, this sue happy society. If I just look at you really mean like that, you're like, oh my God, I have emotional,
trauma.
I've got emotional issues. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm like going, wow.
It wasn't like that 40 years ago, and I kind of wish I was in that era because, like, I feel like there's a lot of babying in wrestling, and there's times it's my fault where wrestlers have been holding my hand, and that happens a lot now. Back then, no one was holding your hand. It was, did you have it or did you not?
Yeah, you had to survive pretty quick back. Yeah, it's but I mean, there's still plenty of opportunity because there's what I do like is there are a couple other organizations that are putting out a nice product, and it gives professional wrestlers and everyone around it additional opportunities because not everyone's going to be a talent inside that ring. There are people that are going to be, they'll be the valets, they're going to be the spokesperson for, they're going to be the referees, they're going to be the people that are going to be setting up, they're going to be people that be tearing down. You always got to have a film crew that's working things. There are so many. I was really impressed when I was working for the WWF at the time during the Attitude Era. What I was really impressed was as I would be arriving at this building, it was almost like a military operation. You had that semi-tractor trailer that pulled up there, and you had people going every different direction, just stringing cable, lines of cable all over the place. And then they would go in and they would take a piece of paper and they would write on it, Vince's office. They would just tape it on the wall with an arrow in this direction, talent be heading back in this direction. I mean, it was, they weren't defacing nothing. They just put all these signs that would be up different places as you walked in. Locker rooms this way, cafeterias that way, Vince's office down this way, and then you get down there, then there'd be a sign, Vince's office here, cafeteria, keep on going that way. It was amazing how they would show up. They being the people that actually had to put the ring together, set all the camera equipment on up, and in preparation thereof, and they were doing this night after night. It really very impressive to watch that. Now cameras are much more lightweight and a lot more things. You don't need all the cables and stuff like that. But so it's a lot different. The product, it's easier to do now, and you have a chance now to stream things on an international, worldwide basis.
What were some of the common question, but it should be asked. What are some of the highlights of working with Vince McMahon, if you could name out a few, and what were some of the not so good highlights, if you wish to answer?
Well, I mean, highlights. Well, I mean, I looked at it that I was working for the #1 company in the world. I kind of just, that's where the fact that I was the holder of the NWA title belt. I was being brought in to work with the #1 company in the world was the WWF. I mean, the WCW still existed. During that Attitude Era, what I liked is, I had to rephrase that, WCW was actually, in the ratings, was beating out Vince. And it made Vince, it made the creative team have to push harder to produce a better product to get more fans. And I actually think during the Attitude Era, they were pushing the envelope in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of great creativity that was taking place there as well. It was a fun era. There was a bit of electricity, and to see that, a lot of people didn't realize I was being trotted both by WCW. I met with Ted Turner, Eric Bischoff, as well as working with Vince McMahon, and so.
Awesome stuff.
But I always tell people that I was able to hold two belts because I had the NWA belt and I was able to have the NWA belt carried out to the UFC Octagon. As far as I know, I'm the only professional wrestler ever to have a professional wrestling title belt carried out to the Octagon. And then I ended up winning UFC number 5. And I'm the only guy to ever hold up both title belts simultaneously inside the Octagon. About close to 20 years before Brock Lesnar ever came along. So I was 20. I was prematurely, 20 years before Brock.
Well, you know what? For someone like yourself to have one of the best in mixed martial arts, and I have to say in professional wrestling as well, it's really great having you on and sharing your insights. So, if say someone wants to get some advice from you, just get started, become the next big thing, how can they get in contact with you, and how can people follow your projects from Canada, from New Zealand to Japan?
Well, the best thing I tell them is just go to my website. My website is simply dansevern.com. Severn is spelled Severn, dansevern.com. It is, you'll see my website. You'll see a bunch of articles. It is being revamped as we speak here right now, and it's going to be probably another 30 to 60 days before it gets done. But it will get done. And I do have all my social media outlets are located there as well. And if you want to contact me, there's even an email address there that you can. It's in place if you want to call. If you want to email me for potential seminar, potential Q&A session, potential UFC hosted event, something of that nature. Because with the coronavirus, a lot of your places like the Buffalo Wild Wings and the Hooters and Applebee's, places like that, they're all so social distance, stuff like that, where I'm having a lot more success just by going to people's man caves. They have a nice man cave, and to where now again it's a very select, small audience. Exactly. As long as you got a flat screen TV somewhere,
love it in here.
And so yeah. So again, it's I'll just say that even though I'm an older Dan Severn today, I'm still staying really quite busy, and that's one thing I am very grateful for. The fact that when I started back in 7th grade, 1969, just over 5 decades later, wow. I'm still doing a lot of the same things. The fact that I'm teaching, coaching, and to be very fortunate, I'm still physically able to. The fact that I'm not all beat up, you don't see any. I mean, I'm not all cut up with stitches and stuff like that. And my nose has never been broken. Teeth, although crooked, they're still originals. I mean, it's I've lived kind of a charmed life. When you look at how many matches, whether it's MMA, professional wrestling, this, amateur wrestling, that, I've been very lucky in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. It's certainly good for yourself to wake up and feel good. And not just thank you for this podcast interview, but thank you for everything you've contributed to mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. Without yourself, the scene wouldn't be as big as it is today. So I just want to thank you. Yeah. You deserve that thank you, and you deserve that respect, Dan.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we'll do this down the road when we get something going up in your area, and people there in Winnipeg will get a chance. I've been to Winnipeg, I think, a couple times before.
Yes, CWE and Mike Davidson, who is on this show, one of my best friends in pro wrestling. You've worked for CWE against some great talent here in Winnipeg, so you're familiar with it up here, and it's a growing scene here as well.
Yep. Well, again, that's right. If I make it up there, I can actually work something with do a little amateur wrestling with this freestyle wrestling, and/or a lot of people realize I actually work with all first responders as well. So I work with law enforcement, corrections, air marshal, border patrol, military. All of them have some sort of a ground combatives program. And I always tell people I have never been none of the above, although a lot of people think I am like a military or law enforcement because I do have that Dudley Do-Right chin and I have the mustache. So I look like one of them. But no, I just, I'm very disciplined. Like I said, living out of a planner, and just the way that I continue to do so many different things, and people are like, well, why do you stay as busy as you do? I go, We're all going to grow old and we're all going to die. You will grow old a lot faster if you simply sit on the sidelines and watch life pass you by. I plan on engaging the game for as long as I possibly can before I become a spectator of life.
Well, Dan, it was great having you on the Jordan Garber Now podcast, and I wish you nothing but the best for you and your family.